So today we learned an awful lot about Octovision, about its architecture, about its feature set, but what it really comes down to is how does this translate to the value that our customers will experience. So from your early conversations, Greg, what do you think that the customers will be most excited by using Octovision?
I think there's a couple things. So first of all, I think the ease in which it can be implemented is definitely an exciting thing for our customers. We've had different options with dashboarding tools, and there's been some pushback on having a SaaS product. So I think the option to have the deployment, however it makes sense for them, whether it be on-prem or in the cloud, I think is really exciting. I think the ability to quickly or rapidly implement without any kind of long onboarding is exciting. And I just think the overall visibility that they're gaining throughout their enterprise is something that the customers that I've spoken to are super excited about.
Great. Looking into our partners and the channel, what do you think the customers from our partners will receive as a huge benefit and that they are really excited about when they see Octovision?
It's 100% transparency. That's what it ultimately comes down to, and it gives them a great option now to visualize their pain points and bring in our partners to solve their pains by the end of the day.
So what I hear from both of you is visibility is kind of one of the overarching topics. So visibility leads to insights. What do you think will change in terms of the actions that they will perform on their shop floors and their production environments, receiving this new level of insights and visibility?
Well, I think when you talk about insights, my mind goes to CVEs specifically for threat detection, for common vulnerabilities and exposures. Just the ability to expose those based on the data that we pull from the NIST or cross-reference against the NIST database, but then the AI recommendations that are provided, right? So based on the environment that the customer is operating in and putting the risk priority on the individual vulnerabilities, giving them the ability to focus their energies on what's most important, I think will absolutely influence their behavior.
What I really liked, and speaking to a few of our customers in the early pre-testing phases, was that they really like the accuracy of the recommendations. More often in other solutions you hear like, unplug it from the network, have you tried to restart it? I mean, those are very generic recommendations, and what I hear is having this level of maybe not the latest version is the one you want to update to, but in your circumstances this version might be a better one because it's lowering the risk score ideally for you with an effort that is manageable. I felt like that was a really cool insight and recommendation on how to then really do something that is meaningful to the shop floor, not just having a blueprint of things that maybe work for the average organization, but not for my organization. Yeah. So that was something that I for sure got really excited about. Now, Alexander, you are out there in the field a lot with the partners and the customers. What do you think is the biggest challenge that they are facing every day that Octovision will address?
And again, it comes down to transparency. We're operating in such segmented environments. We got like little kingdoms everywhere, but you ultimately need a protector of the realm by the end of the day. Someone who has the full responsibility to build a resilient environment. That usually comes up to the CISO level. And in this particular case, Octovision addresses exactly his needs, which is a central view on his whole environment and identifying, as Greg said, the most critical vulnerabilities to his specific environment.
As you spoke about those little kingdoms, those are not necessarily connected with each other. How do we and Octovision solve this?
So actually the current NIS2 initiative forces to build kingdoms as such. It forces a segmentation of networks and infrastructures in order to make them more secured. Octovision now actually bridges that gap, as we can now display even those little kingdoms together in one big one, and one where you can centrally manage the whole environment of all kingdoms.
One of the biggest concerns probably hearing all of that is it must be a tremendous effort to deploy such a solution. Maybe Greg, you can speak a little bit about the time to value and how we try to accelerate this.
Yeah, it's a concern we hear all the time, right? Is an exciting tool, but then it's the question, do we have the bandwidth to implement this? And the great thing is it's built off the current foundation of Octoplan, It's minimal implementation. There's no lengthy onboarding, and even things like the threat detection, we're pulling that data from our automated backups that are already configured in the solution. So there's not a whole lot of configuration on the customer's end. So yeah, the lift should be, I think, is a lot lighter than most of the customers would expect.
And once it's deployed, what would you say decision makers on the shop floor will get out of it like immediately?
Well, I think, I mean, I guess it probably goes back to what you want to get out of it, right? It's a business intelligence tool at the end of the day, right? And with configurable reports and dashboards, you can make the KPIs reflect the information that's most relevant to you in your role in the organization. So I think that there's standard visibility of data that we're going to provide to the customers, but they'll have the flexibility to view data on assets, on jobs, on components, whatever they want to see within the solution. They're going to be able to do that, not to mention the ability to integrate with other solutions through the use of the API or our export functionality.
Let's move up the hierarchy in the enterprise a little bit and look into different personas. So if I would be a CISO, what would you tell me in terms of what I could get out of Octovision?
Well, I think first of all, it probably starts with just full visibility, enterprise-wide visibility, and a full asset inventory. I mean, when I talk to lots of companies, the first thing I hear is, one, we don't know which assets we have and we don't know how many of them we have, right? So having that asset inventory, having that full visibility is huge in and of itself. And then, going above and beyond that, when you start talking about the known vulnerabilities, the risk score that we're applying to it, how do we prioritize our efforts to make sure that we patch the most critical risks, I think those are all important. And then the other thing that continues to come up is from a compliance standpoint. And there are lots of different standards that our customers have to adhere to, and almost all of them, as part of the cybersecurity posture, require some form of disaster recovery. So even if it's just the ability to see what is the performance of the backup jobs, that alone and having that enterprise-wide visibility is hugely important to the CISOs.
And I believe, if I can follow up on this, one of the underestimated things is by now it's required to use modern technology to do it. So it's not enough to have the USB sticks and Excel files flying around on some sort of file server. Yeah. It is really required to have a top-notch solution, and I think Octovision can fill this gap. Now, looking into the OT security landscape, if I would be a responsible person for OT security, what would you tell me, what would I get out of Octovision?
Greg touched on the CISO's requirement, more or less, and on a high level, they are responsible for the strategy at the end of the day. The security people, as such, they then need to get the job done. So what they get is actually a real view on what's around and what do I need to do in order to bring my production environment into a resilient state. And with every backup job that we're triggering, they're actually validating that data. And the insights that they receive out of that data that we're gathering, they've never seen something like that before.
How do you see partners being enabled in this situation to maybe rethink their services or go to market using Octovision?
Well, understanding now that the benefit of data we're gathering is way more interesting to our customers than we initially thought, now offers them a broad variety of services to be bundled around that in order to help their clients to become resilient to a certain extent.
One interesting understanding from us as a company, I believe, being nearly around for 40 years, we don't see our customers as short-term investments, we see them as long-term partners. So how do you see Octovision contributing to this long-term relationship, and what would they think in terms of a long-term deployment?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think that one of our beta customers I think of when you ask that question, whereas a long-time customer, many sites, but yet the adoption wasn't to the level that the CISO had expected. But they had no way of actually verifying that without us telling them what the usage was. So what was particularly exciting for them was having that visibility, and the way that they intended to use it was almost a scorecard per site to see what is the adoption, because all of our customers want the return on their investment, obviously, right? And we want that as well. And so having that visibility, they can literally drill into each site and see how effective the operations team is with deploying it, and are they getting the benefits that they expect out of the solution.
Octovision actually now ultimately moves Octoplant away from being a checkbox item and really utilizing the value that we're delivering.
And I was going to say, the long-term mindset is not just applied with our customers, it's also applied with our partners. So maybe you also could speak about how do you see they can, grow with us, not just in the short term, but in the long term using Octovision.
It's actually allowing our partners now to become that trusted advisor on the long run and really shine in front of our clients with knowledge about their specific environments and offering their services around that.
Now I know we have deployed Octovision already with a few friendly customers. Do you have a war story, a takeaway or something that you could share from behind the scenes when we did the early deployment, knowing that it's in the beta state, and obviously it hasn't been the final product yet, but there must have been some feedback, comments or also aha moments, so maybe you can share one of those.
There are actually two good stories, but the most touching one to me is actually understanding that the client spends quite an amount of money on a solution like ours, and then accepting reality, accepting that it is an install, but not used. And when you look at that from a corporate view, that's the worst thing that could happen. And that refers to being a checkbox item on a NIS2 catalog. That's not who we are. We help to become compliant, but in this particular case, reality proved that you need to have an insight on what's going on and how the product's utilized in order to gain full value out of it. And Octovision was deployed in 3 hours, super simple, connected to Active Directory, and was ready to be used.
That's amazing. Greg, I'm sure you toured through the States as well, and I know we had a few friendly customers there. Do you have a story to share when the early stages of Octovision have been deployed?
I think it's a very similar story. I think one, it's surprising how easy it is to implement and how little training it is. It's really just getting used to clicking around the interface and how do the individual roles configure their screens. But that's super simple stuff. So that was number one, a pleasant surprise. And to Alex's point, I think that it's almost there's a lot of surprise. It's not uncommon for software to not be fully deployed in any piece of software. But I think that it's eye-opening, and it drives further adoption. It gives them that I think everyone wants to use the solution more, but they don't, in many cases, don't even realize that they're not using it to its potential.
Speaking to those customers, they for sure have had other solutions at their hands where they try to get a similar outcome or a similar insight. Did they share anything to you in terms of how we do versus other solutions in the market and what stood out to them using Octovision?
I think that with from a threat detection side of things, we are often a complementary solution. It's not always an either or. So I think the pleasant surprise with Octovision was the accuracy of the CVE data. And again, because we're collecting that data from the Octoplant backups, we're having less false positives. And so I think that that's the biggest takeaway from a threat detection standpoint. The other comparisons aren't all that relevant, because I think that the industry has seen now that what we provide with a truly vendor agnostic solution is really unmatched from our core competency from a backup and recovery and versioning standpoint.
So same question to you, Alex, and to the partner ecosystem. They have seen a lot of solutions and they have to pick which one they want to bring to market. So when they touched Octovision, what was their take in terms of how we do versus other solutions that are out there?
It actually takes a tremendous amount of time, and there are investments come along with that. Sometimes it's hardware that needs to be deployed, sometimes it's just software that needs to be deployed. Octovision is like an add-on for Octoplant. It's a single deployment, and we're actually using the work that they've done before by configuring their environment in our Octoplant server. And it's like super quick, it's done, it's there. And when you look at the overall project costs associated with that, there's literally no services additionally that you need to be charged by upgrading to Octovision at this point in time.
Great. Thank you both for sharing your insights, your learnings, your war stories from the early deployments from Octovision. And I think now we're just equally excited to push it to the broader audience in general availability and see how it becomes reality.